The silence on the bridge was electric, charged with a mixture of anticipation and barely contained fury. Captain Elena Rodriguez knew this moment would define humanity's future. The Vexnar transmission continued to loop in the background, its alien frequencies creating a low, menacing hum that seemed to vibrate through the ship's titanium alloy hull. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, head of Xenolinguistics, leaned forward, his augmented neural interface flickering with translation algorithms. "The arrogance is almost impressive," he muttered, tracing the complex grammatical structures of the alien message. Each word was a carefully constructed weapon, designed to break the spirit before the first shot was fired. The transmission wasn't just a demand, it was a dissection of human history. The Vexnar had compiled centuries of human conflicts, ecological disasters, and internal struggles. They believed they understood humanity's weaknesses. They saw a species that had nearly destroyed itself multiple times, a civilization that had survived climate catastrophes, global pandemics, and the brink of nuclear annihilation. What they didn't understand was that each of those challenges was a crucible. In the quantum-shielded communications center below the bridge, a network of AI systems began their silent work. Project Phoenix, the most advanced adaptive intelligence ever created, was already dismantling the Vexnar transmission, not just analyzing its content, but understanding its psychological architecture. Dr. Aisha Nakamura watched the initial data streams with a predatory smile. The Vexnar believed they were sending a message of conquest. In reality, they were providing humanity with the most comprehensive intelligence packet they could have imagined. "Got you," she whispered. Outside the ship, Earth looked deceptively peaceful. From orbit, the scars of past struggles were invisible. The rebuilt cities, the terraformed dead zones, the massive orbital habitats that represented humanity's refusal to be confined to a single planet. Each of these was a testament to human resilience. In the United Earth Defense Command Center, a different kind of preparation was underway. General Michael Santos reviewed holographic displays showing global mobilization. Unlike previous conflicts, this wasn't about territory or resources. This was about survival, and more importantly, about sending a message to the galaxy. "They think they know us," Santos said to his tactical AI, "but they're about to learn something fundamental about humanity." The AI, a quantum neural network named Atlas, responded with a series of probability projections. Each scenario showed increasing complexity, adaptive strategies that evolved faster than the Vexnar could comprehend. Humanity wasn't just preparing to defend, they were preparing to redefine the very concept of warfare. Back on the UES Defiance, Captain Rodriguez received the final mobilization reports. Every human settlement, from the deep-sea colonies of the Pacific Rim to the research stations orbiting Jupiter, was now part of a living, breathing defensive network. The Vexnar saw a fractured species. They would soon discover a unified organism more complex than any they had ever encountered. Kai Chen, the young communications specialist, had already begun weaving a digital Trojan horse into the alien transmission. It wasn't just a piece of code. It was a cultural seed, a virus of human perspective that would spread through the Vexnar's communication networks. "Information is our first weapon," he murmured, his fingers dancing across quantum encryption interfaces. The ship's AI, integrated directly with the crew's neural networks, began calculating potential engagement scenarios. But these weren't simple tactical projections. Each model was a living strategy, capable of instant adaptation, learning from potential outcomes faster than biological intelligence could process. Outside the ship's quantum-shielded hull, the stars seemed to watch. Humanity had always been an anomaly, a species that turned every challenge into an opportunity, that saw limitations as temporary obstacles. The Vexnar thought they were initiating a conquest. They were about to start something far more dangerous. In the depths of human space, a network of quantum communication relays began to pulse, not with a message of fear, but with a signal of preparation. Each relay was more than a communication device. It was a node in a living, breathing defensive organism that spanned entire star systems. The war hadn't begun, but humanity was ready. The underground research facility beneath the Atacama Desert was humanity's most closely guarded secret. 3 kilometers below the arid landscape, an ecosystem of innovation hummed with a life of its own. Here, the impossible became routine, and the unimaginable was just another Tuesday. Dr. Elena Volkov stood before a containment chamber that defied every known principle of material science. Inside, what appeared to be a liquid metal substance continuously reshaped itself, responding to quantum-level instructions that seemed to blur the line between technology and living organism. Adaptive metamaterial. She spoke softly to her assistant. Dr. Julio Rodriguez isn't just about changing shape. It's about understanding context. The material inside the chamber was more than a technological breakthrough. It was the result of decades of research into alien artifact recovery, reverse engineering, and pure human audacity. Each molecule could reconfigure itself based on environmental demands, learning and adapting faster than any known material in the galaxy. Nearby, a team of xenobiologists worked on something equally extraordinary. Dr. Akira Tanaka carefully manipulated a holographic display showing the genetic structure of recovered Vexnar biological samples. What started as a defensive study had transformed into something far more profound, a comprehensive understanding of alien physiological limitations. "Look here," Tanaka pointed to a complex protein sequence. "Their cellular repair mechanisms have a fundamental weakness. They've optimized for stability at the cost of adaptability." The implications were staggering. The Vexnar believed their biological engineering was superior. They had no idea how fundamentally limited their approach was. In a separate wing of the facility, Colonel Sarah Armstrong reviewed the latest developments in powered exoskeleton technology. These weren't merely suits of armor. They were symbiotic systems that integrated directly with human neural pathways. Each suit was a living, breathing extension of its wearer, capable of making tactical decisions faster than traditional command structures. Her latest prototype, codenamed Hai-Tien, represented a quantum leap in personal combat technology. Instead of simply protecting a soldier, it anticipated threats, adapted combat strategies in milliseconds, and could even predict enemy movements based on micro-environmental changes. "We're not just preparing to fight," Armstrong muttered to herself. "We're redefining the entire concept of combat." Deep within the facility's quantum computing center, a different kind of preparation was underway. Massive data streams from every human settlement, every orbital station, every deep space research outpost converged into a living, breathing intelligence network. Dr. Wei Zong, the lead quantum systems architect, watched as complex algorithms danced across his holographic displays. This wasn't just a communication network, it was a distributed consciousness, a collective intelligence that could process information at speeds that would drive biological minds to madness. Total information integration, he explained to a visiting military strategist, means we're no longer fighting as individual units, we're fighting as a single adaptive organism. The strategist looked skeptical until John demonstrated how a tactical decision made on one side of human-controlled space could instantaneously influence defensive strategies thousands of light years away. It wasn't just coordination. It was a form of collective consciousness that transcended traditional military doctrine. Outside the facility, the Atacama Desert continued its timeless vigil. To any observer, nothing seemed unusual. A few research vehicles moved across the landscape, solar arrays glinted in the sunlight. But beneath the surface, humanity was writing the next chapter of its galactic survival. In orbit, a network of stealth satellites continued their silent surveillance. These weren't mere observation platforms. They were adaptive nodes that could transform into offensive or defensive systems in milliseconds. Each satellite was a potential weapon, a potential shield, a potential communication relay. Dr. Volkov returned to her metamaterial research, carefully introducing new quantum instructions to the contained substance. It responded with a fluidity that seemed almost alive, reshaping itself in ways that would have been considered impossible just decades ago. "We're not just developing technology," she said to herself, watching the material flow and reshape. "We're giving birth to a new form of existence." The Vexnar thought they understood humanity. They had no idea what was coming. As night fell over the Atacama, the underground facility continued its relentless work. Humanity was preparing, not just for a war, but for a fundamental reimagining of what it meant to be a spacefaring civilization. The universe was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The first contact wasn't a battle. It was a symphony of controlled chaos. Lieutenant Commander Zara Okoye gripped the quantum-responsive command interface of the UES Starfire, her augmented eyes tracking multiple dimensional layers of conflict simultaneously. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It was a living weapon that breathed and fought alongside its crew. Surrounding the Starfire, a constellation of human vessels moved with an almost organic coordination. To the Vexnar, it would look like complete pandemonium. In reality, it was a carefully choreographed dance of destruction that defied every known principle of space warfare. "Incoming quantum disruption wave," announced her tactical eye, its voice a calm counterpoint to the brewing storm. Probability matrix suggests 3 primary engagement vectors. Zara's neural implants flashed with a kaleidoscope of tactical information. Each potential attack vector wasn't just a threat, it was an opportunity. The Vexnar believed they were initiating an assault. In truth, they were walking into an elaborate trap that had been years in the making. In the quantum communication hub beneath the ship's primary bridge, communications specialist Omar Reyes worked his own form of warfare. His fingers danced across holographic interfaces, weaving a complex tapestry of misinformation, misdirection, and psychological manipulation. "They think they're reading our communications," Omar muttered to himself, "but they're only seeing what we want them to see." The first Vexnar strike wave approached, a terrifying array of biomechanical vessels that looked more like living creatures than traditional spacecraft. Their weapon systems pulsed with energy that could vaporize entire planetary defenses. They'd moved with a precision that spoke of millennia of refined military doctrine. They never stood a chance. As the first wave entered the designated engagement zone, something extraordinary happened. The human vessels didn't just respond, they transformed. Quantum camouflage systems made ships appear and disappear, creating impossible targeting scenarios. Weapon systems that seemed fixed suddenly reconfigured mid-attack, turning defensive positions into offensive nightmares. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched from the primary command center, her augmented perception parsing multiple layers of the unfolding conflict. This wasn't just a battle. It was a comprehensive deconstruction of the Vexnar's entire military philosophy. "Initiate Protocol Chimera," she commanded. Across the battle space, human vessels began to merge and separate in ways that defied traditional combat mechanics. A destroyer would suddenly split into 3 smaller craft, each carrying a portion of the original ship's offensive capabilities. Another would absorb nearby support vessels, creating a temporary supercraft that existed only for moments of critical strategic advantage. The Vexnar communication networks began to collapse under the weight of impossible data. Every transmission they attempted was met with a counter-transmission that rewrote their own communication protocols in real time. It was psychological warfare taken to its ultimate technological conclusion. Deep within the battle zone, a specially prepared quantum beacon activated. Its purpose wasn't communication. It was total sensory manipulation. The Vexnar sensors would see exactly what human strategists wanted them to see, creating a battlefield that existed more in perception than in physical reality. Lieutenant Commander Okoye tracked the psychological impact in real time. The Vexnar fleet was experiencing something beyond traditional combat confusion. Their integrated biological mechanical systems were receiving conflicting information that challenged their fundamental understanding of spatial conflict. "They're breaking," Omar said quietly, his voice a mixture of professional detachment and human triumph. Not just their formations, their entire conceptual framework of warfare. The human vessels moved with a fluidity that seemed to break the laws of physics. A cruiser would simultaneously exist in multiple positions, its weapon systems firing from locations that should have been impossible. Quantum entanglement allowed for communication and coordination that the Vexnar couldn't comprehend, let alone counter. As the first wave of the Vexnar assault collapsed, something became terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just a defensive action. It was a comprehensive demonstration of humanity's evolutionary approach to conflict. Captain Rodriguez allowed herself the briefest moment of satisfaction. The Vexnar had asked for war. Humanity was giving them a lesson they would never forget. "Prepare second-stage psychological counterattack," she commanded. "Let them know exactly who they're dealing with." The stars themselves seemed to tremble at the implications of what was unfolding. The Janus research station orbited a neutron star, its crystalline structure absorbing and redirecting exotic radiation in ways that would have driven conventional engineers to madness. Here, at the bleeding edge of human scientific exploration, Dr. Imani Okoro was about to make history. Quantum resonance stabilization at 98.7%, announced her primary AI assistant, its holographic form shimmering with complex mathematical projections. The device before her was unlike anything the Vexnar, or any known civilization, had ever conceived. What appeared to be a simple metallic sphere was actually a living technological ecosystem. Nanomechanical structures constantly reshaped themselves, creating and destroying computational pathways faster than light could travel. Each microsecond was a lifetime of innovation, each moment a revolution in technological understanding. Nearby, Dr. Viktor Petrov monitored a series of containment chambers that housed what could only be described as weaponized information. Captured Vexnar communication algorithms were being dissected, understood, and then fundamentally transformed. It wasn't just data analysis. It was a form of technological vivisection that bordered on the metaphysical. "We're not just breaking their code," Petrov explained to a visiting military strategist. "We're rewriting the fundamental language of their technological existence." The strategist watched in silent awe as complex holographic displays showed how human researchers were turning the Vexnar's most advanced communication technologies into something entirely new. What was once a weapon of alien control was being transformed into a tool of unprecedented understanding. In a sealed laboratory module, Dr. Yasmin Chen worked on something even more extraordinary. Her team had discovered a way to create adaptive nanonetworks that could not just process information, but actually learn and evolve in real time. These weren't simple AI systems. They were living technological organisms that could reshape themselves based on environmental demands. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a holographic display that showed nanostructures constantly rebuilding themselves. Traditional computing is about fixed algorithms. This is about continuous, adaptive evolution. The implications were staggering. Each nanonetwork could potentially solve complex problems by literally reshaping its own computational architecture. What would take traditional supercomputers millennia could be accomplished in milliseconds. Deep within the station's secure communication hub, a breakthrough was taking shape. Lieutenant Commander Rafael Santos monitored a system that was rewriting the fundamental principles of information transfer. Quantum entanglement was no longer just a scientific curiosity. It was becoming a weapon of unprecedented sophistication. "We're creating communication networks that don't just transmit information," Santos explained to his team. "We're creating networks that can think, adapt, and evolve faster than any biological intelligence can comprehend." The Vexnar had no idea what was coming. Outside the station, the neutron star's intense radiation created a natural shield that would make traditional scanning technologies useless. It was a perfect laboratory, a crucible of innovation hidden from prying eyes. Dr. Okoro made a final adjustment to the quantum resonance device. The sphere before her began to pulse with an inner light that seemed to defy the laws of physics. It wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a living, breathing testament to human ingenuity. "First stage integration complete," the AI assistant announced. The sphere began to change. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, creating complex geometric patterns that would drive traditional mathematicians to confusion. Each configuration was a solution, each movement a potential answer to problems that hadn't even been conceived yet. In the observation deck, a group of senior researchers watched in collective amazement. This wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of what technology could be. "We're not just developing a new weapon," Dr. Chen whispered, her eyes reflecting the pulsing light of the quantum sphere. "We're giving birth to a new form of intelligence." The Vexnar thought they understood technological superiority. They were about to learn how little they truly knew. As the neutron star continued its ancient dance of radiation and energy, humanity prepared to take its next evolutionary step. The universe was about to change forever, and it would never see it coming. The Psychological Warfare Division occupied a nondescript building in the heart of Sao Paulo. From the outside, it looked like any other corporate office. Inside, it was a cathedral of human manipulation, where reality itself was the primary weapon. Dr. Aria Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, surrounded by holographic displays that mapped the intricate social and cultural networks of the Vexnar Collective. Each display was a living ecosystem of information, showing connections, tensions, and potential fracture points that even the Vexnar themselves hadn't recognized. "Cultural entropy," she muttered to her team, "is our most precise instrument." Beside her, linguist Marcus Wong was doing something unprecedented. He had developed a communication algorithm that didn't just translate languages. It understood the deepest psychological undercurrents of communication. Each message they would send was a precision-crafted weapon designed to exploit the most subtle psychological vulnerabilities of the Vexnar multi-species collective. Their primary target wasn't the Vexnar military. It was their civilization's fundamental sense of unity. In a secure server room, data specialists worked on what could only be described as informational viruses. These weren't simple computer infections, but complex narrative constructs that could reshape perceptual realities. Each construct was designed to introduce doubt, to create microscopic fractures in the Vexnar's collective consciousness. "We're not just spreading information," explained Dr. Elena Kovacs, the lead narrative architect. "We're introducing conceptual viruses that will fundamentally challenge their entire societal framework." The first wave of psychological operations began subtly. Communication networks across Vexnar space started receiving meticulously crafted information packets. Historical records slightly altered, cultural narratives gently twisted, communication protocols imperceptibly modified. A Vexnar diplomat reviewing historical archives would find references that didn't quite match their remembered narratives. A military commander would receive strategic reports with subtle inconsistencies that would be almost impossible to definitively prove false. In the communication center, Omar Reyes watched the initial responses with scientific precision. Each reaction was carefully tracked, analyzed, and used to refine their next wave of psychological manipulation. "Look at this," he pointed to a holographic display showing Vexnar communication networks. "They're starting to question their own historical narratives." The beauty of their approach was its subtlety. This wasn't crude propaganda. This was a surgical strike against the very foundations of the Vexnar's collective identity. Deep within their research, Dr. Rodriguez had discovered something extraordinary about the Vexnar's social structure. Their multi-species collective wasn't a unified civilization. It was a delicate balance maintained through carefully controlled information flows. By introducing microscopic variations, they could create cascading effects of doubt and uncertainty. "We're not breaking their communication," Dr. Huang explained. "We're rewriting the very language of their social cohesion." Each communication packet was a work of art, linguistically perfect, culturally nuanced, psychologically devastating. They didn't just introduce information. They introduced possibility. What if everything they believed about their history was slightly different? What if their current understanding of their collective mission was fundamentally flawed? In the quantum communication centers, specialized AI systems worked alongside human researchers, creating communication models that could adapt in real time. These weren't simple response algorithms. They were living communication organisms that could reshape themselves based on the most minute psychological responses. The Vexnar military continued to prepare for a conventional conflict. They had no idea that the most devastating war was already being waged, not with weapons, but with carefully crafted information. Psychological destabilization at 37%. An AI system announced quietly. Dr. Rodriguez allowed herself the briefest smile. They were just getting started. Outside the building, Sao Paulo continued its daily rhythm. Traffic moved. People went about their lives. No one would ever know about the war being fought in the realm of perception and understanding. The Vexnar thought they understood conflict. They were about to learn that the most powerful weapons are the ones that reshape reality itself. And humanity was just warming up. The Orion Breach wasn't just a location. It was a cosmic choke point where reality itself seemed to bend. Commander Jack Valerian stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, his neural interfaces painting the universe in layers of possibility most beings could never comprehend. Around him, a fleet that defied every conventional understanding of space warfare, assembled with mathematical precision. Tactical projections showed what appeared to be a hopelessly outnumbered human force. To any traditional military strategist, it would look like a suicide mission. The Vexnar battle group approaching the breach outnumbered the human ships 5-1, with technological advantages that should have made the conflict a foregone conclusion. Should have. Quantum resonance field stabilizing, announced Lieutenant Samira Khan, her fingers dancing across interfaces that seemed to ripple with living light. Gravitational manipulation at 92% synchronization. What the Vexnar didn't understand was that this wasn't a battle. It was a carefully constructed theorem of conflict, a living experiment in strategic evolution. The first Vexnar ships entered the Orion Breach, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with energy that could annihilate entire planetary systems. Their weapon systems were calibrated for total destruction, their tactical algorithms the product of millennia of refined military doctrine. They never stood a chance. As the first wave approached, something extraordinary began to happen. Space itself seemed to become fluid. Quantum entanglement fields created by the human fleet began to manipulate the very fabric of spatial perception. Ships appeared and disappeared, existed in multiple locations simultaneously, their weapon signatures becoming impossible to track. Commander Valerian watched the tactical display with a surgeon's precision. Each movement was a carefully calculated stroke, turning the entire battle into a three-dimensional chess match where the board itself was constantly changing. "Initiate phase harmonic," he commanded. Across the fleet, ships began to move in patterns that defied traditional understanding of formation warfare. A destroyer would suddenly split into three separate vessels, each carrying a portion of the original ship's offensive capabilities. Another would absorb nearby support craft, creating a temporary supervessel that existed only for moments of critical strategic advantage. Lieutenant Khan's quantum interface began to sing, quite literally. The communication network wasn't just transmitting information. It was creating a living, adaptive consciousness that could predict and counter Vexnar strategies milliseconds before they were even conceived. The Vexnar commanders watched in growing horror as their carefully constructed battle plans dissolved. Their sensors reported impossible scenarios. Ships that should have been destroyed remained functional. Weapon systems that should have obliterated human vessels found themselves targeting nothing but quantum ghosts. "They're breaking," whispered Lieutenant Commander Elena Rodriguez, tracking the psychological impact of the engagement. Not just their formations, their entire conceptual framework of warfare. At the heart of the breach, Commander Valerian activated the ultimate strategic weapon. It wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It was a living algorithm, a computational entity that could reshape the very rules of engagement in real time. The human ships moved with a fluidity that seemed to break the laws of physics, A cruiser would simultaneously exist in multiple positions, its weapon systems firing from locations that should have been impossible. Quantum entanglement allowed for communication and coordination that the Vexnar couldn't even begin to comprehend. Psychological destabilization at critical levels. An AI system announced. The Vexnar weren't just losing a battle. They were witnessing the complete deconstruction of their understanding of conflict, of technology, of the very nature of strategic engagement. As the first wave of the Vexnar assault collapsed, something became terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just a defensive action. It was a comprehensive demonstration of humanity's evolutionary approach to conflict. Commander Valerian allowed himself the briefest moment of satisfaction. The Vexnar had asked for war. Humanity was giving them a lesson in the true nature of strategic innovation. "Prepare second-stage adaptive response," he commanded. The stars themselves seemed to tremble at the implications of what was unfolding. In that moment, the universe learned that humanity was something entirely new, a species that didn't just adapt to challenges, but fundamentally reimagined the very concept of challenge itself. The Vexnar homeworld of Krazel Prime wasn't a planet. It was a fortress, a living testament to millennia of technological and biological engineering. Massive energy shields rippled around its atmosphere, defense systems so complex they had repelled every known threat for centuries. They would prove useless against humanity. Captain Elena Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the UES Shadowblade, a vessel that was less a traditional spacecraft and more a living weapon of unprecedented complexity. Her team wasn't planning a conventional invasion. They were preparing to perform surgical destruction on an entire civilization's infrastructure. "First Vector Team in position," reported Lieutenant Marcus Chen, his neural interface painting a holographic map of the planet's critical systems. Each potential target was a node in a complex network, not just military installations, but the very systems that maintained the Vexnar's social and technological cohesion. The invasion began not with weapons, but with information. Quantum infiltration units, microscopic machines that existed somewhere between technology and living organisms, began their silent work. They didn't destroy. They transformed. Communication networks found themselves subtly rewritten. Critical infrastructure began to develop microscopic inconsistencies that would cascade into total systemic failure. Dr. Aisha Nakamura monitored the infiltration from a secure command center, her augmented perception tracking millions of simultaneous interventions. "We're not conquering," she explained to her team. "We're performing systemic recalibration." The first signs of breakdown were subtle. A transportation grid would suddenly route ships to incorrect destinations. A military communication channel would introduce imperceptible delays. Energy distribution systems would experience microscopic inefficiencies that would compound exponentially. On Krazel Prime, Vexnar leadership watched in growing confusion as their perfectly engineered civilization began to develop unexplainable fractures. Special operations teams moved with impossible precision. Led by Commander Jack Valerian, these weren't traditional soldiers. They were living weapons, augmented beyond human biological limitations. Powered exoskeletons that could interface directly with any technological system. Neural networks that could predict and counter defensive responses before they were even conceived. "Target the communication nexus," Valerian commanded. A team of 4 operatives materialized near the planet's primary communication hub. Not through traditional teleportation, they existed in a quantum state, simultaneously present and not present, their very existence a form of technological camouflage. Within moments, they had completely rewritten the hub's operational parameters, not by destruction, but by fundamental transformation. The Vexnar's most secure facilities found themselves compromised from within. Security systems began to see the infiltration teams as authorized personnel. Defensive networks interpreted their presence as routine maintenance operations. "Systemic integrity at 37% and falling," reported an AI system. What made the invasion truly terrifying was its precision. Humanity wasn't seeking total destruction. They were performing a comprehensive system reset, dismantling the Vexnar's civilization with surgical accuracy. Energy production facilities found their quantum stabilization fields subtly misaligned. Communication networks developed microscopic routing inefficiencies. Critical biological maintenance systems began to introduce imperceptible mutations. Dr. Nakamura watched the progression with scientific detachment. "We're not destroying," she repeated. "We're evolving." Orbital defense platforms that had stood as impenetrable guardians for centuries suddenly found their targeting systems compromised. Not through direct attack, but through mathematical manipulation so subtle it was almost elegant. Commander Valerian's team continued their silent work. Each intervention was a precise stroke, turning the Vexnar's own technological superiority against itself. Their augmented systems could interface with alien technology at a level that went beyond traditional hacking. They were literally rewriting the fundamental operational logic of an entire civilization. The invasion wasn't about territory. It was about demonstrating a fundamental truth about human potential. As systems began to fail across Krasl Prime, the Vexnar leadership realized something terrifying. They were facing an opponent that didn't just want to defeat them. They wanted to fundamentally reimagine what defeat could mean. Captain Rodriguez allowed herself the briefest moment of satisfaction. The Vexnar had asked for war. Humanity was giving them a lesson in evolutionary potential. The universe watched and learned. The Galactic Concordance Chamber wasn't a place of diplomacy. It was a crucible of evolutionary potential. Representatives from hundreds of galactic civilizations watched in stunned silence as humanity presented its terms. This wasn't a traditional peace negotiation. It was a comprehensive restructuring of interstellar relations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the chamber, her presence alone a statement of unprecedented confidence. Behind her, a holographic display showed not military achievements, but a complex tapestry of technological, cultural, and biological innovations that had emerged from the conflict. "We're not here to conquer," she began, her voice carrying a clarity that cut through centuries of established galactic protocols. "We're here to demonstrate a fundamental truth about evolutionary potential." The Vexnar delegation sat in shocked silence. Their once mighty collective had been dismantled not through traditional warfare, but through a form of systemic transformation that defied every known principle of conflict resolution. Ambassador Kai Chen stepped forward, presenting a comprehensive framework that was equal parts scientific proposal and philosophical manifesto. It outlined a new approach to interstellar cooperation that went beyond traditional diplomatic models. Each clause was a living document, capable of adaptive interpretation based on emerging galactic conditions. "Conflict is not a problem to be solved," Chen explained. "It's an opportunity for collective evolution." The most radical proposal was the Adaptive Concordance Protocol, a diplomatic framework that could fundamentally reshape itself based on emerging scientific and cultural developments. Traditional treaties were static documents. This was a living, breathing system of galactic interaction. Representatives from the Quantum Collective, a loose association of technologically advanced civilizations, watched with particular interest. Humanity wasn't just presenting a diplomatic solution. They were demonstrating an entirely new approach to interspecies interaction. Dr. Aisha Nakamura presented the technological implications. The innovations developed during the conflict weren't just weapons or defensive systems. They were fundamental breakthroughs in understanding how complex systems could adapt, evolve, and transform. "Our conflict with the Vexnar was never about destruction," she explained, her holographic presentation showing complex interaction models that seemed to breathe and pulse with living intelligence. It was about demonstrating the potential of adaptive intelligence. The chamber itself seemed to transform as she spoke. Holographic displays shifted and changed, showing potential future scenarios that emerged from humanity's proposed framework. Each projection was a living possibility, a potential path of galactic development. Commander Jack Valerian presented the military implications, but this wasn't a traditional war report. It was a comprehensive analysis of how conflict could be a catalyst for collective growth. The strategies developed weren't just about defeating an enemy. They were about understanding the fundamental nature of complex systemic interactions. The Vexenar, once the most feared collective in the galaxy, now sat as a transformed civilization. Their hierarchical structure had been dismantled, replaced by a more fluid, adaptive system that bore the unmistakable mark of human innovative thinking. "We're not asking for surrender," Valerian explained. "We're offering a path to collective evolution." The most radical proposal came from the unexpected quarters. Instead of demanding reparations or territorial concessions, humanity proposed a comprehensive knowledge exchange. Every technological and cultural innovation developed during the conflict would be made available to all participating civilizations. It was an unprecedented move that transformed the very concept of interstellar conflict. The Galactic Concordance Chamber watched in stunned silence as humanity presented not just a resolution to a conflict, but a fundamental reimagining of how civilizations could interact. Dr. Rodriguez's final statement would echo through galactic history. Humanity doesn't seek to conquer. We seek to understand. And in understanding, we all evolve. As the negotiations concluded, something extraordinary happened. The very structure of the Galactic Concordance Chamber began to change. Adaptive technologies introduced during the presentation subtly reshaping the environment, creating a living testament to the principles being discussed. The universe watched and learned. Humanity had done more than win a war. They had fundamentally transformed the very concept of conflict.